few initial words.
Thank you very much, and let's give a big round of applause to Madam President. It's terrific to be home and to be with my colleague, Congresswoman Hoyle, and I feel like I'm looking out, and there's something that I've concluded. I am looking at the faces of democracy, and that's what we're all about. And you'll hear we're going to have a pretty spirited debate. That's the way it is in Douglas County. But I want to talk about something just for a moment that we've always come together around, and we need to move quickly. And that is something called the Secure Rural Schools Program. How many of you have ever heard of it? Okay. So our share of this law, and it may be one of the most, if not the most laws I've written, has been about $4 billion for roads and schools and law enforcement, and it's for forestry and PILT and the like. And now we have to come together quickly in the next couple of months to get it renewed. And I bring this up by way of saying that we certainly have plenty of differences of opinion, but my sense is that nobody in the Trump administration gets up in the morning and says, let's just be rotten to anybody who cares about the Secure Rural Schools Program. I just don't think they've heard about it. And we need to do a grassroots movement with friends in this community, across the state, and literally across the country. So if you share my view, and I'll just give you a caption, when we got it passed and a couple of the senior members came to me, and they didn't even know my name because I had just arrived in the Congress. One of them basically said, hey Sonny, come over here and tell me about the Secure Rural Schools bill. How come Oregon gets money? I said, Mr. Chairman, that's where God put the trees. So what I'd like to do as we move to just start this, and I hand this over to the Congresswoman, is ask, and I have been doing this at all the town meetings around the state, is if you have friends around the country who are likely to care about resources, call them and say, you can tell them I told you to do it. Call your senator in your state because we need your senator's support. We need to create a grassroots juggernaut, and we're going to talk about plenty of issues today where there's strong differences of opinion. But what I just said, the senior Republicans in the Senate will do it if we get the grassroots movement going. So thanks for having us, and in the lingo of the United States Senate, I yield to my colleague, Congresswoman Hoyle. Let's give her a big round of applause.
For being here today. I am very, very proud to be from a state where my senators do town halls in every single county of the state. This is something Oregonians expect across the political spectrum because we're elected by you. We should be accountable and responsive to you, which means showing up. Last week we did a town hall specifically on Social Security, and we live streamed it because this is a very big district and not everybody could make it out to Eugene, right? We had as many people, actually more people online than we did at the town hall. We had about 300 people online, 350 online, 300 people that showed up. And we had people from other states who contacted us and said, thank you for talking about protecting Social Security because my elected officials won't show up at a town hall. And that is just wrong. So we're here today. Yeah, you can clap, that's good. And it doesn't mean we have to agree, but we need to have this discussion if we're going to protect our democracy. Because what's happening is we've outsourced our social connections to a social media algorithm that's being controlled by people that want us to stay outraged, that want us to have different information, that want us to be fighting with each other and not paying attention to things that we as Americans across the political spectrum should agree on, like following the Constitution, basic democracy, keeping earned benefits like Social Security and Medicare, Medicaid, which will drastic cuts in Medicaid will cripple our rural health care systems. Those are things we should all agree on. Our veterans services, delivering on the promise for our veterans. So these are the things we can talk about here, and what I would say to you is right now it is more important than ever to talk to our neighbors, and talk to our neighbors who we don't agree with, because again, people are getting different facts, and this is the most important thing we can do. So, looking forward to your questions. Again, thank you for having us here today.
Okay, here are the first three numbers. I feel a little bit like a bingo caller. But, so these are, again, it's the last three digits. So it's 422, 534, and 426. If you make your way to the aisles, there will be a microphone there for you.
You're a track runner.
My number is 422. My name is Monica Mays. I'm actually from Oregon District 2, Jackson County. It's the first time I've been close enough to hear Senator Wyden, so I just came here to hear you talk. But actually my question is for Congresswoman Hoyle, I'm sorry. I live in a district where we have a Republican congressional representative that does not have town halls because he is chicken. He's a Republican chicken. And I was wondering if you'd ever consider coming to a different district to talk to constituents who just want to be heard, that really believe in our congressional and our democratic values. We feel really ignored and left out down there. So that was my question for you. Thank you very much.
Happy to talk to anyone at any time. And one of the things that we're doing, I am on the Natural Resources Committee and the ranking member, so the top Democrat on the Water, Wildlife, and Fisheries Subcommittee. And we're going to be having hearings about things that we can't get brought up. For instance, the cuts to Bonneville Power in the name of government efficiency, when we as ratepayers pay for that. Not taxpayers, ratepayers. So we'll be coming and doing things where we can have conversations. We did a shadow hearing on NOAA and the cuts to NOAA and how devastating that would be. That happened to our commercial fishermen. The fact that the people that know how to operate our tsunami warning system were fired, right? So we came back and said, is that about government efficiency? I don't think so. Happy to come anytime to talk to people. I will say I do work, we don't agree on a number of things, but I work very well with Cliff Bentz. We served in the legislature together, and when there's something that we do agree on, I can go to him, and he has an open door, so I do feel very grateful, but I'm happy to come anytime, anywhere to talk to people about democracy and things that we can do right now to protect our democracy.
Let me add just one thing to that. There's a reason why some of them are pretty reluctant to have town hall meetings, and that you've probably seen the polls and the information over the last couple of days. The country is saying, we're taking a look at this stuff, and we don't like it. For example, we were told all the way through the campaign, you might remember, about how they were going to focus on lowering costs. Remember that? And Donald Trump stood in the grocery store and he said, your grocery prices are going to go down. They're going to go down right away under me. And basically, within 2 weeks, he walked away. Now he's offering a tariff program, which is basically a sales tax on steroids. And the public doesn't like it. And so my guess is that we're going to hear from a lot of members of Congress who are going to be home, like the Congresswoman and I, and their people are saying they don't like it. So you can set your channel on your television or know how you ever get the news, but probably on Wednesday morning, Rand Paul, Republican senator from Kentucky, and I are going to go to the floor of the Senate and offer a privileged motion to get rid of the Trump tariffs because they're bad for America. That's a little more of why I don't think some of them are so hot to have meetings.
Okay, 534 and 426, do we have any of those folks?
So I'm Gina Beam. I'm also with Glide Revitalization, and I didn't have a question for you guys, but I wanted to thank both of you for the support you've given not only our organization, but the county as a whole. That's it.
Okay. My name is Judith Huntley. I am a resident of Sutherland, Oregon. And I'm glad to hear you say about everything that Trump has been lying about when he said he's going to lower all these prices and so forth. I went to OSHU on Wednesday and had to pay $4.10 for gas. And that's not been lowered at all. But I can afford that. I know there's a lot of people that can't. I can afford the grocery prices. A lot of people can't. What I am most upset about is all of the illegal things that he is doing. And he's doing them in the name of things that happened 50, 60, 70 years ago, and bringing that up so that he's able to do all of these illegal things. What are we doing about that? I know that there are a lot of lawsuits and so forth, but when are any of them going to take effect?
Question was a very important one, and I just read a few minutes ago that already 11 courts have basically in decisions indicated that they're opposed to what the Trump administration is trying to do. And the reason why is because it's not a close call. In the Senate, we've been pushing very clearly on the fact that Article 1 of the Constitution says that the power of the purse belongs to the Congress and not to a king. We said no to a king as we founded our country, and so I think you're going to continue to see a push, and in some of these instances, the Trump crowd is just making it up. You know, for example, earlier in the week, Trump said he was going to get rid of the head of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell. And the financial markets reacted so badly, Main Street, Wall Street, every street, that he basically said, I had no plan to do anything like that. A left-wing publication went through some of these instances where he says, for some example, something that's not even close to being true. So that's one of the reasons we have all these town meetings, and what you all are doing is being good citizens and coming out and we're talking about what the real facts are.
So what I would say is this is what concerns me the most. And again, this is not a partisan issue. This is about the Constitution. And the Constitution was set up by the founders with 3 separate and equal branches of government with checks and balances, right? We have the power of the purse. The Senate is there to advise and consent. The courts are, and we make the laws. And the courts are supposed to interpret the laws, and the executive branch enforces the laws. The administration is deliberately doing things to see how far they can go. So our tools are Congress, courts, and community, right? What I will say is that fascism, it rises slowly then quickly. This is a constitutional crisis is the quickly part. So, for instance, with birthright citizenship, we have not only seen people with green cards, and people who are undocumented, not being deported, because deported means sent to the country that you came from, being sent to prison camps in El Salvador. They just shipped 3 American citizens, children, back, deported them, one who was receiving cancer treatment, right, in an effort to challenge birthright citizenship, right? This is a problem. So, when you speak up, it matters. We've been able to push back on tariffs. We've been able to push back on a number of things. Privatizing Social Security, the cuts at the VA, the cuts at NOAA. So your voices matter, and we need to step up now and say, regardless of what party you are in, the founders said that we will never have a tyrant, we shall never have a king, therefore there has to be checks and balances, and so we will speak up in Congress. The courts are ruling to say that the administration can't go as far as it's going, and the people need to step out and come out in the streets and not be quiet and say, it's okay to not pay attention to the Constitution just a little bit right now, because that kind of government overreach doesn't stop. So we need to stop it right here and stop it right now. Your voice matters.
I heard one of you say, how do we get rid of them? And someone said something about an election, I think, here. We've got to win every single day, folks. We've got a big budget coming up. Did you follow what happened a couple of months ago with the continuing resolution and the Congresswoman and I saying we're voting no? Why did we do it? Because we're not giving in to a bully. We're not doing it. Now we've got another one coming up. This will be in the fall. So we can't wait for this year and that year. We've got to go out there and win every single day. And again, come back to some of the Republicans in the Congress. They are home right now, and they are trying to defend the indefensible. I mean, they have in their budget getting rid of the Head Start program. It's in their budget proposal. Meals on Wheels. I was director of the senior citizens for about 7 years, back in the day when I had a full head of hair and rugged good looks. I was with someone who was 94 years old a couple of days ago, and he said he's the unofficial mayor of Portland. His name is Paul Knowles. You may have seen his picture. Paul Knowles said to the crowd, I basically have no one left in family. I'm 94 years old. The only person I see in a typical week is the person who delivers my meal. So say to yourself, how can it be in a country as rich and strong and good as ours, we tolerate an abomination that older people and veterans and others can't get a hot lunch a couple times a week? We're better than this. And now, not 2 years from now or 4 years from now, but now, it's the time to show we are better than this.
Okay, I have 3 more numbers. They are 432, 452, and 477.
The students always get a little reluctant, and the other day, one of the students had a number that had been called and didn't say anything, and said to the other student, this Senate dude is so serious. And then he said to his friend, I bet if we don't ask our question, he's going to come into our house and ask the question in front of our parents. Let's ask. So let's have fun. Everybody just express their views.
Okay, none of those numbers? Okay, here's 3 more. 443, 421, 402. Oh, we've got some takers.
Hi, my name is Melissa Sherwood, and I was wondering if you could talk about the SAVE Act. and how it's really a voter suppression act? And where does that stand in the Senate?
The SAVE Act is also something that is so far removed from good government that we ought to say, let's make sure everybody understands what it's all about. I am the country's first United States Senator elected by mail. Number one, I'm a Democrat. The second United States Senator elected by mail was my friend Gordon Smith, who was a Republican. So we launched something that was smart, effective, convenient for people. We had it efficient. There weren't cases of fraud and abuse and the like. And basically, the way we got through the election during COVID is everybody decided to adopt the Oregon approach. They didn't do it by law, they basically did it. And the fact is that it works. And now we have people who essentially don't want Americans to turn out. And I kind of get why, because we're talking about all the things they're doing that are so unpopular. But that's not what the Founding Fathers had in mind. The Founding Fathers thought that the vote, and particularly the right of people to be heard and to express themselves, was all about why we said, we're leaving the Brits, we're leaving them in the dust. So the Senate is going to be a tough challenge. I don't want to suggest otherwise. But that's the reason why I started saying, with your friends, talk to people in other states who have Republicans in the Senate, and we've only been at it 20 minutes or so, and talk to them about protecting the vote, talk to them about secure rural schools, tell them you don't call them very much, but democracy is on the line. We can win it, but it's going to be tough. Please.
Follow-up. Can you explain to everyone here, because not everyone understands, how this really disenfranchises married women in particular?
Let's let Val start with that.
So I voted no on the SAVE Act in the House, and it's egregious, absolutely egregious. If we want to protect voting, there is a way to do that, and I was proud to join my senator, Senator Wyden, in introducing the Vote From Home Act, so that people can vote from home and have mail-in, ballots, where we have a paper copy of every ballot. Now, in the SAVE Act, what it says, now my colleagues on the other side of the aisle said we have to stop voter fraud. That is not accurate. We are solving for a problem that can be solved in other ways and virtually doesn't exist, right? So we are going to disenfranchise people from their constitutional right to vote in an election for what? Something that, again, there has been a concerted effort to undermine our fundamental faith in our electoral system, and that's dangerous. So we had an executive order by the president and the SAVE Act that says that your birth certificate must match your ID, so your real ID that you go and get and show a number of documents for does not count. A number of military IDs do not count. So you have to have a birth certificate that matches the name on your license or passport. Now, I changed my last name, so I would have to find my birth certificate, bring my marriage certificate, then bring my passport or my driver's license, and that costs money. That's a poll tax. But it disenfranchises women who change their last name specifically, and my colleagues, my Republican colleagues said, well, it doesn't say that. It doesn't say that, but it's up to the states. Well, the newest representative, Maxine Dexter, who represents Portland, said, all right, if really this isn't a concern, will you vote for my amendment saying that women don't have to have that extra barrier, that we're not going to disenfranchise 69 million Americans from voting? Well, they wouldn't vote on that amendment. They didn't allow a voter on that amendment, and Republicans voted no. So fundamentally, it's harder for women to vote. What the executive order from Donald Trump says is that we can't have vote by mail, that we have to use voting machines that don't exist yet. I mean, I'm worried about the integrity of the next election. I am very glad that we have Tobias Reed as our Secretary of State, who is very serious about protecting our right to vote. Oregon does it right, and everywhere in the country should do it like us.
After we defeat this so-called save, or whatever they want to call it, for the last 3 Congresses, I've proposed taking Oregon's vote by mail national. We're going to keep doing it until it becomes the law of the land.
I'm Jim Little, and thank you, Senator Wyden and Congresswoman Hoyle, for being here today. We appreciate it. I wanted to share with everyone a statement about the Oregon Veterans Home. There are 2 homes that are in Oregon, and our veteran population is 80. I can appreciate that because I'm one of those. We have been trying for the past 12 years to establish the 3rd Veterans Home here in Roseburg on the medical campus. And last June, Senator Wyden, Senator Merkley, and Congresswoman Hoyle sent a letter to the VA Secretary bringing this situation up. As it develops today, the state has provided $35 million for the home, and we're waiting for the federal portion of $65 million. This has been an ongoing effort for all these years. Our veterans are aging, the home is badly needed. And I wanted to congratulate and thank you so much, Senator Wyden and Senator Merkley and Congresswoman Hoyle, for the letter that you sent this month to the VA Secretary asking him to please place this as a priority 1. I'm asking not only for my brother and sister veterans, but, well, I'm in my 80s. I'm looking forward to possibly a bed in that home at some point.
In Douglas County, every day is Veterans Day. And Tim Little has been leading this cause, and I'm going to let the Congresswoman who's been working with Senator Merkley and I so diligently have a chance to go through it. But this is really about our priorities. In other words, Senator Merkley and I very much favor what Mr. Little is talking about. But have you read that one of the first things the Trump people did is they said we're going to cut the number of people who are going to work in veterans facilities? Cut the number. Veterans care in America can be very darn good if you can get it. But now we're seeing the Trump people want to make cuts. So what Mr. Little is saying, and saying it very eloquently, is that given the growth of the veterans population and the fact that this community is already stepping up and consistently standing up for veterans, now the question is for the federal government, and I'm the senior Democrat on the tax writing committee, what do we want to spend money on? Do we want to spend money on a veterans facility like Mr. Little is talking about? Or do we want to give big tax breaks to billionaires? That's our choice. And as the Democrats' point person for taxes, I'm going to fight those billionaire tax reductions every step of the way.
I first voted to fund this veterans home in 2011 with now Commissioner Tim Freeman when he was a representative, and then Representative Cliff Benz, and we have been working on it since then. At this point, we do have bipartisan support for funding this veterans home. Our veterans put their lives on the line to protect and serve our country, to defend our freedom. And it is up to us to make sure that the benefits that they earned are delivered upon. So we are still fighting on that. It is a bipartisan, very, very focused effort. And I can tell you, your local electeds here have have been just nonstop keeping this a priority, so you should thank them as well. And then I will say two other things. One, it was a couple of months ago, actually all the time is, like, I feel like every day is Blur's Day right now, right? But I was speaking to some people at the VA, and they said that there was a nurse that had moved her family out from Florida, showed up to come work at the VA, was getting fingerprinted, and was told her job no longer existed, right? So they're saying, well, we're not cutting, but they are. And then I was having dinner the other night, and this woman came over and said, I am a doctor at the VA, and what is happening is affecting our ability to care for veterans, right? She said, we had someone that was coming in, a doctor, and then her offer was rescinded, and then it was put back on the table, but by then she had gone somewhere else because she didn't want to deal with the instability of the federal government. Our federal workers right now are under attack, and they're showing up every day. We have people calling for their Social Security benefits that are on the phone for 6 hours, and they are getting disconnected because there is a purposeful breaking of our federal agencies. There is an effort, and let me tell you, it may not be public, but we hear about it, to privatize the VA. There are services that our government should do, and one of those is, you know, returning on our promise to our veterans to take care of them. That is our responsibility. So we'll continue to fight for that, and thank you for being such a great advocate.
Okay, a few more numbers here. 399, 475, and 531.
What was the first one?
399,
399?
475, and 531.
If you're on your feet, let me use my power to let you ask your question.
We're going to go on that side of the room.
Oh, okay.
Number 399, George Roth, Roseburg. You know, I finally figured out why the price of eggs is so high. It's because Congress has too many chickens. Thank you for being here, and I am concerned about many things. I will talk about just one. I'm very concerned about a recent report from Dan Bareilles, an IT person at the National Labor Relations Board. After the DOGE team showed up at that facility, he was monitoring the computer activity and carefully documented it. He noticed that the security for the systems was first disabled. The logging of transactions that shows what's happening and records what they're doing was terminated, and large amounts of data from their system was being sent to an unknown source, probably via Starlink. Those people created several user IDs to the systems there. 15 minutes later, there were several attempted accesses using those user ID and passwords from IP addresses in Russia. Where is our data going? This is probably not unique. It's probably just one that's reported. Social Security, you name the company, the facility in our government that's being accessed by these people, and this is probably what's happening. God knows. Help us to stop this.
I'm often described as the Senate's privacy hawk, and I spend a lot of time on these issues. And a friend sent me a note the other day and said, hey, privacy hawk, what's the story? You get many other people in the flock. And the point is, I think the answer is now senators are finally waking up to the threat. And let me tell you specifically what I'm focused on. You probably have seen that Elon Musk looks like he's on his last few days with his service for the federal government. Given what I know already, because our investigative staff has been following the way they've been accessing data, what I want to know is, what is Elon Musk going to be able to take with him when he leaves? Hold on. We've got investigators looking at exactly that question. What he's taken already. I'm going to get to the bottom of it. I hope to be able to have something to say about this shortly, because we have a Social Security nominee who I put a hold on as well. So we've got several actions to stop this underway. But the point really is, this is the time when privacy finally ought to get some real attention. The Chinese have been hacking us through flaws in the phone system. The DOGE people got in there right at the beginning. I blew the whistle as soon as I heard about it. At 1 o'clock in the morning, the New York Times started writing about it because we blew the whistle. The fact is, the executive branch, where Musk has been basically operating under one man's authority, Donald Trump, has basically been the Wild West. They have been able to do anything they want. So there's currently an investigation on what they've done already. 2, we're going to have a special focus on what Trump is going to let Musk take with him. And 3, I want this to lead to an overhaul of the privacy laws in America, because there are too many risks to too many people in too many cases. And this is going to be a huge priority of mine in the days ahead. Count on it.
The reason that we know about that is because there was a federal employee that was brave enough to speak up. So understand that this administration is not just going after people who are the most vulnerable and can't fight back, but also going after unions for a reason. Unions have been the voice of working people, right? Have been that balance. And so this federal employee put his career on the line. They are getting threats. They're getting intimidated. Russell Vogt, who heads up the Office of Management and Budget, has said, I want them to be miserable every day till we can push them out. So the reason we know is because someone was brave enough to stand up. So I'm vice chair of the Labor Caucus in the House, and so we immediately put out a letter demanding answers from the NLRB about what happened, about who had access, about how they had access, the fact that Russian IP addresses knew the exact passwords, that's not a coincidence. So I also talked to my Republican colleagues and say, I'm pretty sure your constituents didn't vote for that. So we will continue. We're very, very lucky that we've got such a privacy hawk in the Senate. We'll continue to demand answers. When we don't get them, there will be lawsuits. Again, a lot of the federal unions have come in, and the ACLU, the trial lawyers, have come in to sue. The courts are responding, and if the courts don't respond, we in Congress need to step up. Unfortunately, we don't have the majority in the House or the Senate, but we're still going to not be quiet. And then community. We need to continue to be informed and to speak up and understand. I live in a rural community. My neighbors vote differently than I do, but they get different information. Literally different information. So we have to build that community and not outsource it to a social media algorithm run by an oligarch that wants you not to be paying attention.
On this side over here.
That was a long wait for you.
Oh yeah, but I sat down.
Thank you.
I'm 475. My name is Kathy. I'm from Roseburg. My question is regarding children, especially the immigrant children they have an immigrant mother, biological, but they are a U.S. citizen. They have a U.S. citizen biological father. What do we do, and how do we help these children not be deported to Honduras, El Salvador, wherever?
The short-term answer to that is 2 words, and they were really sacred to the Founding Fathers. That's due process. And, yeah, I see my buddy there in the back in the white shirt. He's shrugging his hands, and for good reason, because 2-year-olds and 4-year-olds are not exactly experts at due process law. We get that. So we're going to have to build some steps very quickly to ensure that they have due process. But the reality is, you look at the El Salvador situation, the Supreme Court ruled against Trump, and Trump basically said he wasn't going to move, but now it looks like he is, because he's getting beaten up. He thought that he owned this issue of immigration, and now he's seeing the American people and all of you have a sense of fairness that he wasn't counting on. People believe in due process. It's a bedrock principle of the country. And in the town meetings, this is my 7th, that's why I'm losing my voice in the last week, I've been struck by how many conservative people, business people, and others really want to fix this now. For example, farmers are saying, we need labor. We want to have people get better conditions, better housing, better wages. By the way, these people who are undocumented and work in the fields, they're paying taxes, for Pete's sake. So it seems to me what we ought to be doing is, first of all, for these decisions, making sure that the kids that are involved in the system have due process rights, and we're reaching out to lawyers and others to do that. But second, I think it's time to say in America that if you're talking about somebody who has been here for like 15 years, never broken a law, paid taxes, did nothing except be a good citizen, it is time for us to fix the system. We can do it as part of sensible actions on the border. Sensible actions on the border, citizenship for somebody like that who's worked hard and has kids, that's the way out of this. That's the American way.
Immigration system, and we had opportunities in 2008, 2013 or 14, yeah, and in 2024 with bipartisan bills. I am on a bipartisan bill, the Dignity Act, that would strengthen and fund our border security and also offer a pathway to citizenship that is not onerous. Have people be able to get work permits. This is really important so that we can know who is here. But again, the same people who broke the system are the ones saying, well, we're going to get private mercenaries to come out and pick up people who are undocumented because they've committed a crime, because they've chosen to use free speech to talk about things that the administration doesn't agree with. Now, it doesn't matter what party you're in. The fact is that due process and free speech are constitutional rights, and we have to stand together to defend those. Those 3 children that were deported, a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 7-year-old in cancer treatment for metastatic, a very bad cancer, sent without their medication, because even though they are American citizens because they were born here, the administration wants to overturn birthright citizenship and has even sued to say that Native Americans should not be considered American citizens. Right? Right. So under the 14th Amendment, those rights were granted in 1924, and we're not going back. So this is wrong, and again, there are Congress, courts, and the community. You don't deport an American citizen without due process. Having a green card gives you certain protections that they are not recognizing. Having a visa, we should not have people who are coming to the United States being held for months with no charges. The fact is that people aren't coming here. We rely on tourism, right? We rely on sales to other countries. This is breaking our economy, but it's fundamentally wrong, and we're not going to stop talking about it. And I will tell you what, I did town halls in Curry County, down in Brookings, in Coos Bay, and in Reedsport, and this was the #1 issue. And again, that wasn't Eugene and Corvallis. People are concerned about the lack of due process, because if they can do it to you, if they can take those kids who are American citizens and ship them to another country, they can do it to any of us. And we need to stand up for what our Constitution protects. That is not a partisan issue.
How many people here are Native Americans? Okay, you can see the number of hands. That means that all the rest of us are part of the immigrant experience. We need to make sure people know it.
All right, we have anybody waiting? Oh yeah, where are you?
Thank you. Thank you, both of you, for being here this afternoon, and thank everyone here for coming. My name is Dennis Everhart. I'm a resident of the United States of America, a veteran. And I've heard a few words today spoken that I want to bring out, and then I apologize, I need to use some notes. But I've heard outrage, I've heard Congress, courts, and community. And my comment, along with a couple of questions, is that with increasing frustration, we have been watching this administration trample the norms, the checks and the balances, and pushing us increasingly into dictatorship and oligarchy. Well, it's distracting us with the chaos of DOGE antics and the tariffs and the clown show cabinet. The administration has neutered Congress, and they're in the process of subjugating the justice system. And my question for you, then, either one of you or both, what concrete actions, and not political rhetoric, not platitudes, what concrete action are you planning to address this assault on our democracy? And then twofold question, what concrete actions and impactful actions can we as citizens, can I as a citizen do to help restore the balance? Thank you.
I've always considered myself a pretty hard worker. I've never, and our staff has never put in the hours that we're putting in, because in the Senate, most of the bills that we're talking about go to the Finance Committee, where I'm the ranking, Democrat. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, kids, most of them go there. So my theory is we've got to come to play every single day and never let up. For example, early on when Trump did that spending freeze, he shut down the Medicaid portals, which are hugely important to seniors and prescription drugs and nursing homes and the like. And I wasn't even sure my network of whistleblowers had it together, but I said, what the hell, this is so serious, I'm putting it up. And I put it up that all 50 states had their Medicaid portals shut. Seniors couldn't get information on their medicine, couldn't get information about nursing homes, and within 2 hours, the Trump people said we didn't mean to do it. Within 4 hours, they said, well, we think we've got it fixed. Within another 2 hours, they said it'll be fixed by tomorrow morning. So the point really is, I went to school on a basketball scholarship. You can come to play every single day. And there is something that all of you can do, because you can be whistleblowers. When you and your friends see stuff, don't sit down and write us a big book report. Just shoot us a text, make a quick call. We'll follow up. I was with the Head Start community just earlier today, because they lost Head Start for about, a 3 weeks. But they called us. Head Start, because of an odd connection, is under the jurisdiction of the Finance Committee for the standpoint of payments. And I basically did nothing except blanket Washington with phone calls. Cliff Benz, to his credit, basically said, all right, they're making a lot of noise in the Senate. We're making noise too. We got it fixed. But 2 days ago, the Trump people said, okay, we had to give on this because of the bad press. We are going to try to eliminate Head Start nationally, permanently. This is going to be hugely damaging to kids. So when I'm done with this meeting, I'm going to get back on the phone and go to work on it. So the point really is, this is not something someone asked about a central committee and being involved in the fall of 2026. We're doing this every single day because the stakes are so high. We lose something like Head Start, it'll be a huge battle to get it back. Same thing with Medicaid, and why I'm putting so much time into that. We lost the Medicaid vote, the Congresswoman knows about this, by one vote, and we thought we had it. So whether it's health care, whether it's Social Security, whether it's taxes, whether it's trade, I want you to know, as one of your elected officials, we're at it every single day. My wife said, sometimes we wonder where you are, and we can't even find you because we know you're somewhere prosecuting the case. And you give us the ideas, you've got a commitment that the two of us will follow them up, period.
It's a great question because every day I wake up and it's easy to get overwhelmed with the chaos, but that's the point. So I called my father and I said, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know, maybe there's somebody better that could be doing this. And he said, well, he said Valerie, because he calls me Valerie. Valerie, if this were a different time and things were calm and they were focused on policy, you wouldn't be the right person. He's like, you are a scrapper. You ask hard questions. You're not afraid to speak up, and that's what's needed right now. So there's little things and big things. Before I got here, I was on the phone with a Republican colleague and the administration because I got called from some people in the military about a law that, or rule that's being passed that the TSA will not recognize military IDs to go through the airport on May 7th. So it's little things like picking up the phone and saying, is this accurate, because this is what you just sent to your officers to tell everyone. Now, our people in the military aren't necessarily considered residents of the state that they are in, which is why the military ID is so important. Now, it turns out they want a modern ID, and we've worked on that, so it's little things, addressing key things every day. Secondly, talking about the constitutional crisis that we are in, and focusing on, no matter what else happens, and any of the other drama, talking to federal workers, protecting their IDs, being their voice, speaking out on the floor, speaking out in committees, and keeping focused on our constitutional obligation. I took an oath to uphold the Constitution, which said there should be 3 separate and equal branches of government, and I'm not going to roll over and give that obligation over to the executive branch. And in terms of what people can do, I know I said community. I mean, step up. Come out in the streets. Talk to your neighbors. Make sure you understand that talking in a silo on social media isn't communicating to people. We have lost that sense of community. But when you speak up, when you contact us, when you call our offices, then we are able to tell those stories. So I need specific stories so I can go to people and say, for instance, did you mean to fire the people that know how to run the tsunami warning system on the West Coast? I don't think they're your stories, and we need you to speak up, and we'll be right there with you. I wish I could say more. I'm not sure. I'm doing it as we can.
Okay, I have a few more numbers for you. 497, 382, and 385.
Hi, I'm Kevin Bell, 385. I'm a wildland firefighter for going on 6 years now. It's been in my blood. My grandfather besides just the federal funding freeze I get paid off of state grants, get paid off of federal grants. I'm more worried about the logistic people in there. You know, people who are going to get me fed, the general GIS systems. How am I going to keep my people safe? I'm a T1, so I'm squatting. And I just would like to reinforce that, you know, the state can't do it all. the feds need to pick up and go through for however they do it. And I want to thank you for your time, and that's my time.
Not only are you right, but the situation got more urgent a couple days ago at the Portland Fire Center, the Coordination Center. They told me, I usually get a briefing early on. They said the fire season is going to be longer, it's going to be hotter, and when it comes, it's going to be harder for us to get more firefighters because there are going to be problems on the east coast of the United States and we won't be able to share as much as we can. So, apropos of this next budget, we've got to do everything we can to both help the people that we want to protect, and the Congresswoman and I have been working on this together. We had a special workshop, for example, just on the rights of federal workers, and one of your colleagues came and had a wonderful presentation, then put his piece of paper, down and said, I want you to know that I've done this for years now, sleeping in my car. I didn't have a family. It's wrong when people say that we're waste, basically saying that he understood people were calling him trash. These are some of the best people we have in federal service. We've got a couple opportunities to do some additional help. I'll have a big prescribed burn package, which would provide a lot of work for forestry, people, and prescribed burns is about the best prescription for getting the forest healthy again. So we are all in, the two of us. She represents the congressional district, I represent the state. That's where I've been the last couple of days. Congresswoman, what's your thoughts?
So, first of all, thank you. I come from a family of firefighters, and they're structural firefighters close to wildland, but it's still, as we're seeing more and more urban conflagrations, fires coming into urban areas, we need to make sure that we address it right away, and there's so many pieces to it. We were able to get a permanent raise in pay for wildland firefighters. That is something that I have focused very hard on. And I have colleagues who, of course, that was bipartisan, although you wouldn't believe it, there were actually some people that did not think that was important. They haven't done the job clearly, and they're patting themselves on the back, but meanwhile, the purchase cards for the people that work on the systems to feed you, to organize things, to do the administration, to administer the Viper system, right? That says where wildland firefighters should be deployed to. They weren't able to purchase the things that they needed, and a bunch of them got fired, right? So you can't pat yourself on the back and say, yay, we raised the wages for these people if we don't have that. I listened to a great Substack on wildland firefighter issues, and every day, every other day, and so I try and keep up on that. My feeling is we need to approach things differently. They are gutting our federal agencies. They have fired foresters. They have fired the people that can do the prescribed fires. They have, we're going to have to shut down access to our federal parks. So I'm putting forward a bill, and we are going to have, I think in October, a bipartisan hearing here that the Cow Creek tribe has agreed to host on tribal co-management. It's the Pacific Northwest. I'm working with a Republican in Colorado. Tribal co-management of our federal lands, because you can't tell me that our local Native American tribes don't understand how to manage forests. They were doing it long before us, and I think they were doing a better job. Also, part of that bill will be any timber revenues could be split between the counties and the tribe. This means our parks will be able to be open. This means that we can have one type of management for our forests, right? So the reason I want my colleagues to come here is because we can show with the checkerboard ONC lands what it looks like to have BLM management, Forest Service management, tribal management, state, and private timberland, and also show them the burn scars. Now, there's a very bad fire in New Jersey, and I'll tell you what, when the smoke from the Canadian fires last year came to DC, I took the opportunity to talk to all of my colleagues policies about forest policy, and they didn't care on the East Coast because they don't have to deal with it. Well, now there are fires in New Jersey, and we have reached out to say this is how we handle wildland firefighting. And let me tell you about the cuts and to our federal agencies and to the people that do the work and how that's going to affect you. So I use every opportunity to talk about it, and I look forward to inviting you all to this public hearing. And again, this is an opportunity. We've seen tribes who have been able to hire back foresters that were fired from our federal agencies, and there's a lot of interest and bipartisan support, and we're hoping we'll be able to move that forward.
Let's do a little check. How many still want to ask a question that hasn't been asked?
Senator, we have one right here.
Good. No, I'm just trying to get a sense of the number of people who want to ask about something that hasn't been asked. Go ahead.
Right here.
My number is 497. My name is Susan Applegate. I'm from Yoncalla. I would like to say that I'm sad that we don't have more mayors, like the mayor of Roseburg here, and our county commissioners. I miss them. It's such a nonpartisan kind of discussion. These are issues that affect us all. Anyway, I would like to say that I hope that we're not speaking to the press or to Congress, both in the Senate or in the House, with these removals of people to El Salvador or out of the country, to Honduras or wherever they're going, as deportations. They need to be called abductions.
Don't forget, you could add abductions and violations of due process.
No, exactly and precisely. And the other thing is, I'm very, very, I wake up at night worried about this part, and that is, the courts don't have the enforcement capacity. They can't send a military presence or even a marshal to go and arrest the perpetrator, in this case, Donald Trump, for breaking the law. The Supreme Court has said no more, they call them deportations. But President Trump is saying, well, we're going to go ahead and do it. We are helping. Pam Bondi has said, we're doing what we can do, and it's zero. So I don't understand. Please address the mechanisms. The only thing I can see is Congress. But we have too many cowardly, afraid Republicans in our U.S. Congress to stand up to this man.
Your point is well taken and certainly correct that literally Trump has so many advantages procedurally. But one of the things that we've learned just in the last couple of weeks is Trump hates to be embarrassed and hates to see that one of his ideas is way out of step. For example, I think probably the most significant action that has happened in this regard is Trump putting a 90-day pause on his tariffs. This is incredibly embarrassing to him because he has always called himself tariff man, A. B, if he had his way, he'd probably get rid of the income tax, just use tariffs so he could try to muscle around small countries. So your message is true, is correct. But when the heat gets really hot, Trump melts. He always has. His friends will tell you he melts. Now I see the skepticism on your face, but the reality is his polls have moved in the last 3 weeks to be way behind all the other recent presidents.
Let's have another election.
Well,
You know, I think, Senator, that you're right. I know that he
and you're right.
Well, but I'm going to say this other thing. There's another thing I know about Donald Trump. He has such a fantastical imagination and narcissistic compulsion that he will turn anything that is negative happening, he will lie and say it's the opposite. So to him, he is winning on tariffs.
No, I don't think he believes that he is. He's trying. You look today at the story in a paper that's been very friendly to him, the Wall Street Journal. They cite all the examples Trump has used to make up what's going on the trade, issue. They said, for example, today that Trump is claiming that he has 200 agreements already basically done on trade. The Wall Street Journal said there are only 195 countries. So the point,
We'll fact check.
and our speaker is absolutely right, and it's why the two of us are here today. I mean, if we could have one of these in every part of the United States regularly, we'd have a lot more leverage to protect your rights, and that's why we're here, because we want to spread the word. But if you had told me 3 weeks ago that Trump was going to be in the position I saw this morning where they put up his figures, his popularity is way behind, disapproval is way ahead of approval. That wasn't the case 3 weeks ago. And Musk is basically being pushed out of Washington, D.C. like a puppy going out the door, defeated. So we got a lot to do. But I'm telling you, when I come to a meeting like this, and I've had them all over the state, and so has the Congresswoman, I'm telling you, people have seen what's at stake, and I'll give you a personal example. My parents fled the Nazis in the 30s. Not all got out. My dad was one of the famous Ritchie boys, the German kids who dropped the pamphlets on the Nazis. And my mother was our hero, because she told all the Jewish men that they better recognize how serious Hitler is. They kind of thought he was a kook and a nut, but didn't realize how damaging he was. So my mother got all the men together and they fled the Nazis. They had a permit to come east and settle in the United States. And I dedicated this book that I recently wrote called It Takes Chutzpah, which is the Yiddish word for grit and determination and fight, everything you're showing today. And I pointed out that my mother fled the Nazis, and now my wife and I have a 12-year-old beautiful redheaded daughter. And I said, I think everybody I know understands what's at stake, and we're going to make sure our kids and our families don't have to flee like what we saw with the 30s in the opposition to Hitler.
This is why it's really important that you let us know and share our stories. I've talked to fishermen, I've talked to farmers, I've talked to small business owners who are just getting decimated by these tariffs. We're not going to win a trade war with China. They can just hold on. They also own a lot of our debt. So we are able to get movement when we're able to tell the stories of the actual impact. And what I do, it is why I'm effective, is I tell the truth. I don't care if someone's a Democrat or Republican. I'll tell them when I agree with them and when I don't. But my Republican colleagues are hearing about this in their district as well. And I also work a lot with law enforcement and military service members, and they are very clear. They also took an oath to the Constitution and this country, not to one man, but to the good of the country. And I have faith in the American people, and I have faith, yes, it is hard, we're in the minority, but again, if we stay focused on due process, we stay focused on speaking up about constitutional crisis and the real impacts. Again, you cut $800 trillion out of Medicaid, our rural hospitals shut down. So speaking up about this in a way that people can hear it, which means, I mean, quite frankly, as Democrats, a lot of time we'll give academic, long explanations in a way that normal people can't understand. Talk directly to people about what's happening and let us know. And if you are a federal worker and you do have a story, we will protect your identity, we will fight, but we've got to hear about what's going on. It's the only way to stop bad things from happening and make good things happen.
Okay, we're going to go for the last two numbers here. 418 and 525. 418 and 525. Looks like we've got one of them. Oh, two of them. Great. One of those was going to the bathroom. So I'm going to find another number. And then you'll get, and then you can get ready.
525 is here. 525.
Hi, my name is Jack Kuchler, and I have a question for both of you. The President signed a memorandum this week requesting investigation of Act Blue. It's a fundraising platform used by many non-Republican grassroots potential groups to manage their donation payments. Act Blue provides the internet connectivity and IT resources grassroots cannot individually manage. It is concerning that these investigations are only targeting the organizations that do not support the current administration, and from my perspective appears to be attempting to undermine our constitutional rights to gather peacefully and our First Amendment rights to express free speech. While the current administration ignores the court rulings, including the Supreme Court, they are weaponizing what's left of a loaded justice system to undermine anything not supported by Project 2025. What actions are being taken to maintain separation of the three distinct branches of our government in order to sustain the checks and balances that you've spoken about today?
So what I will say is the worst thing that happened for our democracy was the Citizens United ruling.
Right on.
Because when that happened, it allowed for what we saw in our last election. Right, where a man spent $250 million and now has $38 billion worth of government contracts, which interestingly enough are not focused on by DOGE. But there is an investigation of Act Blue, and it is a portal through which usually Democratic candidates, progressive candidates raise money. Win Red is a platform that does the same thing for Republican candidates, is not under investigation. So we need to see this for what it is. Now there are other platforms, and if there is wrongdoing, whoever you are, it should be called out, it should be investigated, but this is one more way to make it so that the 2026 election is not fair. And so we have to get out. We are not going to match the money. I have colleagues who have told me privately, if I take this stand, Elon Musk will come in and spend all kinds of money to primary me and I'll lose my seat. I'll tell you what, if I lose my seat because I did the right thing, I will sleep at night. I'll also be able to... That is what's needed, is some courage. And people get courage when we give it to them, which means we have to speak out. We have to beat those social media algorithms. We have people that are watching news that only tells one side. Speak out and don't let money buy our elections and our speech.
Okay, one last number. It is 478. I'm going to keep going.
I'll use this to make a lengthy closing address as well. If somebody with the chairman or something like that says they're going to give you your closing address, try to get out as quickly as you can. They're deadly boring. And
$40,000 from a terrorist state of Israel. You do not represent us. You represent a foreign terrorist government.
okay.
We're talking about democracy.
We're going to talk about the last person's question, but I will tell you.
Birthday message.
I will tell you,
You're spending millions of dollars while you're talking about.
what we ought to do is stop the Trump program to turn Gaza into a hotel. Okay. Do we have the last question?
I don't think we have. I'm just going to keep pulling numbers. How about that?
Here's where we are, folks. This has been a great town meeting. Thank your neighbor. And recognize that if we had town meetings like this all over this country, we'd have a lot more votes in the Senate and the House. So what we said today is you're on point on the big issues, on issue after issue. What we need to do is now figure out how to generate more grassroots support. Because I think when Donald Trump woke up this morning, and apparently he spends a big chunk of his mornings watching TV, he saw that the bottom was coming out of his support. And the bottom, folks, the fact is the bottom is coming out because he is wrong on the Constitution. He's wrong on Social Security. He's wrong on protecting your privacy. He's wrong on dismissing federal workers. He's wrong. He's wrong. He's wrong. You've got the drift. You're right. We think that we can take the incredible commitment we've seen on a Saturday that turned out to be a nice day, and you've got a congresswoman, you've got a senator who's going to take what you're talking about, and we're going to